Hello, welcome. It's Martin Pauly live here on YouTube from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. You've probably seen some of my videos on YouTube. You may even have seen some of my live streams from flights. Today I'm going to do something different. Today I'm going to try and make this interactive and have a dialogue with you guys. It's a first attempt. We'll see how well it works. We'll see how many people will watch this, and if anyone actually likes the format. And if it does work, if people do like it, we'll probably do it again, maybe on a monthly basis, something like that. The idea is you can ask me questions right here, right now on the show, anything about flying, about flight planning, weather briefings, engine management, airplane ownership, whatever it is, bring it on. If I can, I will address it. I will try to help. Or if you have an interesting or funny story or experience you want to share, we can do that here too. And there are 3 ways you can contact me. 1, maybe the easiest, through the chat window in YouTube. 2, we can talk over the phone. And 3, that might be the best one, we can have a conversation over Skype to make it really interactive. If you do want to use Skype with the phone, please send me an email with your phone number or your Skype name. You can send that to martin@martin.aero. You see the web address down here, martin@martin.aero. I'll get that. And then I can call you via phone or via Skype. And to encourage calls with phone or Skype, anyone that I will talk to today will be entered into a drawing for a $25 gift card for Sporty's Pilot Shop. Just a couple of house rules to keep it civilized. One is, when you do check in, I'd appreciate it if you give me a first name I can use to actually talk to you like a human being and not a computer handle. And then 2, while I want to be pretty open with the topics we can discuss, no political discussion, please. That'll be edited out before the show is posted then permanently. So with that said, let me take a look at who is on and what kind of questions people are asking. John, great explanation. Lean of peak, need a video on hard start procedure. Yeah, that's something that is a little dependent on the airplane you have and the engine you have. Some airplanes are very difficult to start when they're hot. Some are pretty easy, and the rest, there's no one size fits all recipe I'm aware of. If you're oh, I see you have a Bonanza with a 520. I'll tell you what works for me, John. And the easiest way I have found is prime the engine as usual with the fuel pump, with everything forward, then pull the throttle back to idle, crank the engine with the starter. And as you do that, slowly advance the throttle from idle to full open. And at some point there, when you reach full, it will fire. And when it does, and when you can hear it spin up, retard the throttle and get it to an RPM that's safe. There's another method that people use where people use the electric fuel pump to circulate fuel through the system for 90 seconds. That works for some people, it doesn't work for others. I have had bad luck with that, but give that hot start procedure a try and see if that works for you. Chuck is asking, I'm curious to know how you got started into how I got started into flying. That was a long time ago. That was back when I lived in Germany. That's where I was born and raised. I grew up next to an airline captain. He flew for a charter airline called LTU, which later became Air Berlin. And the first flight that I remember, I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, was from Düsseldorf, Germany to Athens, Greece. And I was in the jump seat of an L-1011 the whole time. And I think ever since then I've been hooked on flying. Probably bothering that neighbor of ours more than he wanted to with questions. And ever been excited about flying since then. I started flying gliders when I was 14 years old. That was the minimum age for flying in Germany. And was a flight instructor later in the flying club that I was in. Also got an airplane rating, and then in '98 I moved to the United States. I've been here in Iowa since then, got my instrument rating, and now for 6 years I've had my Bonanza, November 70 Tango Bravo. So that's the short story of how I got started with flying. What else do we have? Michael is asking, how did you get your Bonanza planes before this? Bonanza is my first airplane that I owned. I did have a partnership of a glider, an ASW 15B in Germany with one other partner there. And then I've been renting, I've been in flying clubs and in partnerships, but the Bonanza is the first airplane that I owned by myself. I do not regret making this step. It's something that gives me flexibility, flexibility, peace of mind, comfort. It's convenience also, just knowing that I can leave all my stuff in the plane, my documentation, my headset. I don't need to spend a half hour preparing the plane for a flight when I go flying. It's all right there, and all the way I left it. So that's very, very nice. John is asking, what do you think about the G5 configuration to replace vacuum? I do not have first-hand experience with the G5 or with any EFIS system. It's something that, if money didn't matter, I would probably have something like this. But money does matter, so I still fly with the fairly old traditional panel that works reliably, but it doesn't have a G5. I don't think I would hesitate to replace my vacuum-driven or pressure-driven instrument indicator with a G5, as long as I still had the another gyro instrument like the turn coordinator, or some other backup. These electronic instruments have become very, very reliable, and I have actually had a vacuum failure in flight. I also have had a failure of the attitude indicator, my mechanical attitude indicator itself. Both needed to be overhauled. I have yet to have a failure of something electrical in my airplane. So I think I would trust the electrical system. Mike from Toronto is asking, what is the annual cost of ownership for your aircraft? I have never actually added the whole thing up, if every drop of fuel that I put in there, every landing fee that I charge, because in a way I really don't want to know. But I can give you a couple of highlights. Insurance for my A36 is about $2 to $2.5K a year. Hangar rental at the airport where I'm based is $171 a month. And then we have annual inspections that and other maintenance, depending on what's going on, that can range from $2,000 to $4,000 a year. So not cheap, but overseeable, I would say. On top of that, of course, is the cost of capital, and we all have different ways to account for that. The cost of fuel, other fees. So it really depends on what all you want to include there to see what total number you end up with. I see we have somebody from my home country, from Hamburg, Aviation Worldwide. Hallo, viele Grüße. How did you decide on the Bonanza? Joel is asking. Well, Yeah, that was a not a very sudden decision, but one where I think the further I got in my decision process, the clearer the decision was, and was actually pretty definitive at the end. And looking back, I would have made the same choice again. I needed something with more than 4 seats. Becky and I have 3 girls, so 5 of us in the family, and we could never fly anywhere together in the Arrow or Cherokees or 172s that I was flying before. And I actually looked at Lances and Saratogas, given that I was very used to Pipers, that would be a good choice. And it probably would have been an okay choice, but then somewhere along the lines I also looked at the A36 Bonanza, which also had 6 seats. The cabin's a little smaller than the Saratoga, but performance is a little better. What really made a difference to me is I went to 2 online forums at the time, piperowner.org and beachtalk.com. Those 2, could almost call them type clubs. And the support, the dynamic sharing of information, and the openness with which people were helping each other on Beach Talk was a very, very strong argument to get a beach airplane, because I knew that I was going to be supported by a large number of pilots and owners around the country, around the whole world really, that would address questions that would help. And there was just a pride of ownership that I was sensing beach owners had that I did not see with owners of Lances and Pipers, other Pipers. And like I said, in the end, that moved the needle quite a bit towards the Bonanza, towards the A36 Bonanza, and I have never looked back. I've never regretted that decision. Would be interesting to know if how things would have turned out if it had gone the other way, but I guess we will never quite know. All right, next here, Mike is saying, I'm not an aviator but a boat captain. I find videos like Lois interesting as I compare them to the way I operate a vessel with trip planning, weather info, traffic, communication, maintenance. That's interesting to know. I have never owned a boat. I don't even know anyone that owns a boat. But yeah, I can imagine there's a lot of commonality, planning, probably especially if the trips are longer, crossing multiple countries, going to foreign locations. I bet there is a lot to know and a lot to do. And yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that that there's some similarity there. Matthew is asking, what's the history of 70 Tango Bravo? When did you take ownership? And how do you go about finding her? Yeah, 70 Tango Bravo has had several owners before me. The owners that I bought it from were 3 gentlemen in the Houston, Texas area. They all worked for NASA down in Houston. They were sharing this airplane, and as far as I understand, some of them, at least 2 of them, were reassigned or had contracts expire and had to move to a different area, so they could not keep the partnership going. I found the plane advertised on Beach Talk in their for sale section. I looked at it there. I looked at a few other airplanes too, but that is the one then that after some time and negotiation I decided to buy, and have been very happy with it since then. Brian is asking, do you fly mostly for business or personal use, and what year model is your A36? I fly exclusively for personal use. The company that I work for unfortunately does not allow me to use the airplane for transportation, even though it is an aviation company. that would be nice to use, but that's not in the cards here for my current employer. So it's personal use only. It's the breakfast and lunch runs that we all go on for the $100 hamburgers. It's vacation trips with the family that have taken me pretty much all across the country. And yeah, that's it. The A36 I have is a 1978. That is the first year that they had the 48-volt electrical system. It is 1 year before they had the extended baggage compartment behind the rear row of seats. So I don't have that. Sometimes I wish I did have that. I know there's a way to retrofit that, but I haven't done that yet. So 1978 A36. Another one from Germany. You guys are staying up late. Herzliche Grüße zurück nach Berlin. Question from Mike. What are your future aspirations in aviation, Martin? Or are you happy where you are? Well, it would always be nice to learn more, right? I think a multi-engine rating would be nice. Seaplane rating would be nice, but then I don't know if I could actually afford a multi-engine airplane and fly it as much as I think I would need to be proficient. Seaplane, I don't know very much about it. I think that would be a lot of fun, but again, how often would I be able to do that? I really don't know. I could see maybe sometime down the line get back into instructing. You know, like I said, I was a glider instructor in Germany growing up. I could see maybe as a retirement job picking up instructing again and being an instructor and mentor pilot for people that are learning. Beyond that, I think flying will stay a hobby and a means of transportation for myself, not a commercial activity. Scott is asking, as a student pilot, I was wondering if you had any wisdom to share that would be useful in becoming a pilot. Oh man, that's a very open-ended question. I would say this: the most important thing for a student pilot, from my experience, is to pick a good instructor, one that has experience, one that you have good chemistry with, where you feel comfortable, and somebody who can point out something you did wrong without getting upset. Probably not somebody who is still a beginner himself or herself, even though I understand a lot of flight students are instructing as they become commercial pilots. I never quite know where they would take the experience from to get some real life experience. But when I got my instrument rating, I was training with an instructor who was a former freight dog, and he was very, very helpful for me in taking me into some situations that were maybe a little out of the ordinary, not dangerous, but just show me how different situations present different challenges, and then also how to address these challenges, how to solve the little problems that appear. And if an instructor just doesn't feel right, if you don't feel like you get your money's worth, don't be shy to address that and pick somebody different. I know that might not be a pleasant conversation to have, but everything else, what airplane you train in, and I know it affects cost a little bit, the flight school, ground school, but I think having a good instructor and someone that you even will want to stay in touch with after your training is over and you have your license would be a good thing. Hopefully that addresses a little bit of your question, Scott. AT1357, drop me a line next time near Chicago and let's go flying. What the hell happened to the German team in the World Cup? Yeah, did you have to bring that up? Maybe that's house rule number 3. No German soccer discussion here. Yeah, that's a little embarrassing what happened there. Michael is saying, enjoy the big airport videos. Could Denver be in the future? Then maybe Vail or Telluride for mountain flying. Yeah, Denver could be in the future. In fact, I've been thinking about what one of my next big trips could be. I would love to go back out to the West Coast. I'm not sure whether that will happen yet this year or in maybe next year. But Denver could definitely be a stop. I have been in Denver before, not at Denver International, but at the Jeffco Airport, or whatever they call it these days, Rocky Mountain Executive or something like that. Beautiful area, beautiful part of the country. And yes, I would definitely like to come back there and make a video about Denver. However, Vail, Telluride, no, I'm not an experienced mountain flyer by any means. And my A36 with the IO 520, it's the heavy airframe with the not so powerful engine, and it struggles with high density altitudes more than the V-tails do, or more than if I had an IO 550 maybe, or even a turbocharger. So I don't think that will be a possibility, not until I get a different engine, a stronger engine one day, or maybe if I rent a plane sometime and do some mountain flying with an instructor, we could turn that into a video. Ricardo is saying great channel and ciao from Italy. Well, thank you very much, and I don't speak any Italian, otherwise I'd be happy to return the greeting in Italian. Ian from Seattle is asking, what was your favorite flight that you've flown? Oh, that's easy. That was the big trip out to the West Coast that I did 3 years ago with our youngest, with my daughter Elizabeth. You may have seen the video. It's on my YouTube channel, called Big Trip in a Bonanza. It was almost 2 weeks on the road, and we went to South Dakota. We spent a few days in Yellowstone National Park. Then we went to a little fly-in in Idaho that was organized by someone from the Beach Talk group. Very, very nice weekend there. From there to San Francisco, to the LA area, to San Diego, to Albuquerque, and then back home. That was, I would say, by far the nicest trip I've had in terms of scenery, in terms of experiences, in terms of people I've met on that trip. We've had many other flights for family vacations that took us to destinations near and far, and those destinations or the vacation trips for one were very nice, but the actual flying part, yeah, no question. That trip out to the West Coast was great. All right, Paper Pilot is saying, hi Martin, love your videos, just wondering what do you do for work? I work for an aerospace company here in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We make avionics equipment for mostly larger airplanes. We make cockpit instrumentation, we make radios, we make weather radar, or we make really almost everything you need that's electronics in an airplane. And in that company, I'm a program manager. My background is software engineering. I used to work on different air transport aircraft, like I worked on the display system for the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Later I worked on stuff for Airbus on the A380 and A350, and right now I work on Bombardier's C-Series aircraft, and try to keep that all working and going. I know we have more questions, but I do want to check if by now we have anyone willing to talk on the phone. No, not yet. I do have an email from Bruce saying, just curious, Martin, what drew you to Cedar Rapids? Well, that was a job that I am working for now, that I've been working for a little over 20 years now. I was at a point in Germany not too long after I left college, in my first job, where I had to change because the organization I was working for was closing, and one of the offers that I had was from my current employer here in Cedar Rapids. And I felt that a year abroad would be a fun thing to do, nice experience, would look good on the resume, and I would learn a lot. It could be fun. That was in 1998, and I've been here ever since. That's how I ended up in Cedar Rapids. Steve is asking, do you have any formal training in filming, and how much have you invested in video and editing equipment? Well, let me start with the latter half of the question. Just like the cost of flying, I really don't want to know. I don't have any super fancy equipment. I have a decent camcorder. I have, I think by now, 5 GoPro cameras, and I have some audio gear. None of that is expensive equipment. But it's all of good quality, or what they call prosumer equipment, except the GoPros. I do not have formal training in filming, but it is something I've been interested in for a long time, that I read a lot about, especially about audio. Audio is good audio is important to me, and I hope it's working out right now. Video is something that's fun. I've been learning on the job, so to speak, for many years, not just for flying, also for other events, and something I enjoy doing. But no formal testing, not something I've ever done for a living. Let's see, what else do we have? I watched Matt depart Telluride, and not sure Martin would be as comfortable with the performance at altitude. I think that's along the lines of what I was saying earlier with my 836 and the IO 520. I don't think those are places I want to go to, not until I get an IO 550, which when it's time for an overhaul I may do, or if one day a turbocharger is in the cards. Adam is asking, any tips on keeping instrument currency? Well, I don't know where you live, Adam, but what I like to do here in the Midwest, where we do get a fair number of days every year with low or lowish overcast layers, is I like to stay instrument current in actual conditions. I hate the hood or the foggles. So when the conditions are right and we have an overcast layer, 500 feet, 1,000 feet or lower, depending on what your comfort level is, I do like to go out and fly approaches just in those conditions. And not always, but almost always, I can maintain my currency that way. When we do go on actual trips, instrument approaches happen at times, but not enough for the kind of flying or the amount of flying I do that would keep me current. So I do need to go out and do approaches for currency. And if you live somewhere where you have clouds without convective activities or other dangerous situations, icing, I would encourage you to take advantage of that and do the same. Then we have Mike from Toronto saying, I'm wondering whether you had any advice as to when is a right time for a pilot to start looking at buying an airplane versus renting. How many hours or experience should one have? Yeah, I often see that kind of question discussed between pilots or on internet forums like Beach Talk, and I don't think there is a really good answer that addresses every situation. Some people say, buy your last airplane first, fly enough to figure out what it is you really need, and then buy that airplane and be happy with it for decades. Other people say, no, to know what you really want, just you need to start somewhere and then figure it out along the way as you switch. I know pilots that are perfectly happy buying a new airplane every year, and they like the variety. I'm different. I like the A36 that I have. I think I'll be keeping it for a long time. I'm very, very comfortable in it. I know it inside out, and it would take me a long time to get as comfortable as I am now in something different. But I think as to what is the right time to start, that's probably more a question of your financial situation than your flying skills. If you're a student pilot and you have the financial means, I don't see anything wrong with buying a Cherokee or a 172 or something like that. If you have an instructor that is comfortable teaching you in your airplane, if you're more advanced than that and you can afford to buy an airplane, I would not look at a minimum number of flight hours to do that. Hope that helps. Then we have a person here saying, I'm commercial multi-engine land Canadian pilot. Haven't touched a plane in years because it's very expensive to rent. Yeah, it's there are cheaper hobbies than what we do. Absolutely. Curious, you say a commercial multi-engine land pilot. The job market, I understand, is very, very good again for pilots, and it keeps improving. So maybe there's an avenue there for you to get back into flying if you desire to do that. Then we have Thomas saying, videos are awesome. Thank you, glad to hear. Make sure you tell everyone to follow you on Instagram also. Yeah, I do have an Instagram account. The handle is simply N70TB, like November 70 Tango Bravo, so you can look me up there. And I do have some pictures from my flying there, in addition to the videos on YouTube. Ian is saying, I really appreciate your conservative nature related to flying and how you convey that in your videos. It helps me to realize that even a guy with experience like you has limits. Yeah, certainly, we all have limits. One of my favorite sayings or quotes of flying is, it takes about a year to learn to fly, and then it takes decades to learn when not to fly. And there's some truth to that. I mean, maybe not quite literally, but learning to fly under good conditions is one thing, and then learning to assess conditions and understand when a situation that doesn't look very good is still doable in a safe way, versus something that is going to expose me to risks that are not worth it. That is something that takes a long time. A lot of experience, and that's probably also where experienced pilots can help the ones that are new to it. I would encourage everyone that is beginning to fly, beginning to go cross-country flying, to look for a mentor pilot, maybe someone at your home airport, somebody who knows you and your airplane and the amount of training that you have, somebody you can call before you start a flight, and just get a second opinion on maybe some really, really good information that could prevent you from running a bad situation one day, or the other way around, that could show you why something that you think might be dangerous or risky is in fact pretty benign, and those situations exist also, and with experience you'll learn how to figure out what is what. Love watching that long trip video. I bet that was the one out of the West Coast. Showed my wife that video and helped sell her on buying an airplane. Awesome, happy to hear that. That's really nice to hear that. I mean, I like making the videos. For me, they're a good learning tool because I can relive the flight. I can see what went well and what didn't go so well. If others can learn from it, great. But if it helps other pilots, go back into flying or try something they haven't done before, or like in your case, buy an airplane, that's great. Very, very glad to hear that. If you ever fly into the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area, a real barbecue is on me. Fantastic. I will keep that in mind. Thank you, Brian. Greetings from the Bahamas. Oh yeah, more international visitors. Paulo says, don't you intend to record flying and performing the red part of checklist for training purposes? I'm sorry, I do not understand what the question is. Maybe if you're still online and could rephrase that a little bit, I can take another look. Steve from Phoenix is asking, when did you start flying and how many hours have you accumulated? I started flying in 1985. That was when I started flying gliders. And all in all, gliders and airplanes together, I have approximately 2,000 hours. I've been flying over 100 hours a year consistently since I had the Bonanza. I've been flying less than that before per year, and certainly less when I was flying gliders. Glider time is a little different than airplane time. We did the winch launches in Germany, and flights could be as short as 3 or 4 minutes when we didn't hit thermals. So it takes a long time to accumulate a large number of hours, but that's roughly where I'm at right now. Take another look at the email. No, still no takers for Skype or phone calls, as far as I can tell. Luis from Brazil, thank you very much. Brian, have you been to Heart 8 at KSEP? I don't know if that's a question for me or for somebody named Brian. Maybe that relates to the barbecue question or the barbecue comment earlier. Oh, and then we have somebody again from my home country, from Ulm. I actually lived in Ulm. I lived in Ulm before I moved to Cedar Rapids. I was working there, my first job out of college, for at the time was called DASA. Maybe you are familiar with that place. They've probably changed their names multiple times. They're probably Airbus Defense and Space these days, but I have not been back to Ulm in quite a few years. Would love to come back and visit sometime. And when I lived there, I flew out of Biberach. That's the little airport a little south of Ulm, and I flew gliders and airplanes there. So glad to hear someone from there is online. Lauren is asking, does ATC ever recognize the airplane registration, say hello, or compliment you in your videos? I don't recall that ATC has done that. I know some of the local controllers in Cedar Rapids are familiar with my channel, and when I meet them or talk to them outside of flying, they do mention something like that. I've had a few cases where other pilots, random people that I don't know, comment on the videos on frequency. Usually very brief exchanges. But no, I've not had someone from ATC bring that up directly. Malibu Flyer is asking, which GoPro do you use, and do you have a problem with battery life and overheating? Yes, I have a few different GoPros bought at different times. I have a, what do I have? I have 3 of the older ones, the, what are they called, 3 or 4 that record HD resolution. Then I have one GoPro 5 and one of the smaller 5s that looks more like a cube. All of them have issues with battery life. All of them will overheat if you're not careful. So on long flights, when I need them for a long time, it requires a little bit of planning when I turn them on and off. I do have usually one of those power bricks with me to recharge them in flight if the flight is longer, and you know, to keep them cool, I turn them off or take them away from the windshield sometimes. Or sometimes it helps to put a little piece of white paper on top of them to give them a little shade. So yeah, those problems exist. I think they're pretty common with GoPros and other electronics also. You know, like my iPad has overheated many times in flight, and we just try to plan for it and deal with it somehow. What's the next avionics upgrade? Let us help you spend your money. Well, thank you for your help. Honestly, I don't know. You know, as I said earlier, if money didn't matter, I would likely have a nice EFIS system. I would like to have a better digital engine monitor. You know, the one that I have does what I need, but I have to toggle or cycle through the different parameters. I can't see everything at once, so a nicer digital engine monitor would be nice. In terms of GPS, you know, what I have is old. I have a Garmin 530 and a Garmin 430, both with WAS. And while they're somewhat dated, they really do everything I need. You know, there's never been a situation where I couldn't get into airspace or couldn't make an approach or couldn't land in an airport that I could have gotten to with better navigation equipment. So I really see no urgent need to replace those. Autopilots, you know, I'm watching those with interest. There's been a lot of dynamic development in the autopilot market. Garmin and others have brought some models to the market after a long time of a long idle time. The one I have is fairly old. It's a Century 3. It's pretty capable. You know, it'll do an ILS or LPV approach coupled down to decision height. But you know, the equipment is aging, and at some point a new autopilot might also be something new. So a lot of words to say that I really don't have a clear roadmap of, you know, what in what order these things might happen. It's a long wish list, but without any urgency, and we'll see what happens over time. Checklist red parts. Oh, that's the checklist question from earlier. Emergency procedures. Yeah, I have not made a video about emergency procedures. Maybe that's something I'll think about it. Emergency procedures are quite different from airplane to airplane. You know, what I do in the Bonanza may not be of much value or interest to somebody flying something different. But yeah, maybe something to think about, and thank you for the clarification. Richard is asking, do you have a USB charger on the airplane? Yes, I do. It's a panel mount USB charger with 2 ports from, I think the company is called True Blue. And no, it does not go into the cigarette lighter. I have experimented with those, never had any luck. They either had bad radio interference or they did not have enough power output to charge my iPad. But this True Blue device, while not cheap, works really, really well. And I installed that maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and have been very, very happy with that. I think there are by now some other devices, other companies that build something similar, and that is what I would recommend. Then we have someone here from Russia after a sad quarterfinal game. Yeah, there's the soccer topic again. Brian talking to Joel, go to T74 and eat at Louis. Oh, that must be the barbecue topic again. And Dave from Indianapolis, have you had any flights where things didn't go well or as planned? Yeah, I can share a story about one flight. That was a long time ago. I was a glider instructor at the time. I was in the back seat of an ASK-21. It's an older glider, two-seater tandem. Student in the front, me in the back. It was a pre-solo student. And one of the things we do with all pre-solo students is we do some stall and spin training. Not that we encourage spins, but spins were allowed in that glider, and it was important to us that students would recognize what it was and know what to do immediately to get out. So that was fairly standard, and I told the student that I would demonstrate it for the first time, and then the student would the next time around recover himself. So we slowed down. We were in a turn, slower, and then a cross-controlled rudder and aileron to get us into the spin. As I was doing that, and the glider started to dive and turn, the stick came undone, and I was holding it in my hands. And I had just told the student, just feel along. I'm gonna get us in and out, and here we are. And all I have left is my rudder and speed brakes. And so I thought, what can I do to not alarm the student, because I didn't want to tell him that I have no control of the glider. So I said, hey, you're doing great. Tell you what, we'll let you recover. So very quickly. Aileron neutral, rudder left, and very, very gently pull the elevator back to get us out, and it worked beautifully. And it wasn't until we were on the ground that I told the student what had happened. What had happened is we had a passenger flight just before, and for passengers that we don't know, the pilots in the front seat, passenger in the back, we take the stick out. There's a simple wing nut to secure it, and they had put the stick back in, but not secured it with the wing nut. So it came out at the worst possible time, but all is good. And student and I shared a good laugh after we were back on the ground. Beyond that, I've been pretty fortunate. No real emergencies. I remember one flight in the Bonanza. That was about, that was in the first year of ownership, where I had a fuel leak. I mean, I've had mechanical problems, this fuel leak. I've had instrument problems, a vacuum or pressure pump that broke, but nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing really that isn't considered almost normal with a well-defined response. Dave is asking, have you ever used flight simulation to help supplement instrument proficiency, especially with live ATC services provided from Pilot Edge? I've been using Pilot Edge for about a year and love it. I have not. I have used flight simulation, back when I was a teenager on computers I had to learn about instrument flying, and I thought it was a very valuable tool for that. But once I started instrument flying, no, I have not used any simulation tools to supplement the real flying. Not saying that's a bad idea. I know that works really well for many people. Maybe if I lived in a part of the country where I couldn't routinely fly IMC throughout the year, that would be something I would look at more. But no, I don't have experience myself with that. William says, I have WingX for 2 years. I purchased 4 flights 6 months ago. I keep going back to WingX. Why did you pick WingX? Yeah, WingX, just to clarify, that's the iPad app that I use for my electronic flight bag, for charts, for sectionals, and for display of weather and traffic. I first got WingX actually before I had the Bonanza. I was still in a partnership with the Arrow. And at the time, ADS-B was fairly new. I found advertised what I believe was the first portable ADS-B receiver, a product called Sky Radar. And I bought it, and at the time, ForeFlight, to my knowledge, didn't exist. Sky Radar worked with an app that came with it, which was very, very basic. Or it worked with WingX. So I got a WingX subscription and have been using WingX ever since, and I'm very, very much used to it. I know people that use ForeFlight feel very strongly about ForeFlight. I've tried to play with ForeFlight a couple of times. I can't find anything wrong with ForeFlight, but I'm so used to WingX that I keep getting back to it. I think I would have to spend a little more time with ForeFlight to get comfortable with it, but I believe either app does everything we need in flight. At least I've not found anything missing. So both are good apps. Mike from Toronto, can you tell us about some of your upcoming flights this summer or later on this year? No, actually, I don't have anything firmly planned for the rest of the year. Like I mentioned earlier, it would be great to go back to the West Coast, and that may still happen later in the year, maybe September, October, but that's far from certain. I'm sure we'll be going back to Chicago before the year is up. That's a fun family destination that we all like, and that we can easily make a day trip. But yeah, in terms of longer flights, nothing planned right now. I would also be willing to bet that we'll be going to Savannah again before the year is up. Our middle child, Riley, is in college there. But yeah, beyond that, no big plans for anything new or anything majorly exciting. What is your cruise speed, and will you be at Oshkosh? Cruise speed, I plan for 155 in my A36. You know, like I said, I have the heavy airframe, the lower powered engine, and 155 is what I can get lean of peak on most days, and that's what I plan for. And Oshkosh, no, I will not be at Oshkosh. I have been at Oshkosh a few times in my life. I would love to go back, but unfortunately, like most years, Oshkosh collides with an event that I very much like, called RAGBRAI. It's a cycling event through the state of Iowa, and about 15,000 participants take 1 week to go from the Missouri River to the Mississippi River. And if that wasn't the same week as Oshkosh, I would do both, but unfortunately most years it is the same week. So I'm unfortunately not able to do Oshkosh. Let's see, let's give one more try here to reach Ian.
Hello, Martin.
Is this Ian?
Yes, it is. Sorry for the trouble earlier, but it's good to talk to you and good to see you. Thanks for doing this little video Q&A.
You are very welcome, and thanks for being the first brave person that wants to be live on this channel. So if I did this right, I hope people can hear you, and I know I can see here people can see you for sure.
Oh, great.
So where are you calling from?
I'm from Seattle. This is the Pacific Northwest. A little bit of a gloomy day today, as it usually is up here. Um, yeah, we have the Arlington fly-in and air show going on right now, so it's a good aviation area.
Mm-hmm. Good. Good. Yeah, I have not flown myself to Seattle, but I have visited the area a number of times, both for work and for personal travel, and it's very, very nice there. I know people always joke or say that it's raining and overcast all the time, but I have not found that to be true. I have found more good weather than bad weather in Seattle.
Yeah, no, it's definitely good weather, and I mean, I got my pilot's license last year, and I'm a VFR pilot, so I can only go out when it's VFR. But
Mm-hmm.
there's plenty of days and plenty of times you can do it. It actually brings up some questions about weather and how you. I guess you kind of mentioned this before about how you handle weather and how you can learn quickly in a year how to fly, but it takes forever to learn how to know when not to and know what the weather, what kind of weather is okay, acceptable
Right.
to flying isn't. And have you been on a trip where you pre-planned, everything looked good, you went for it, you took the trip, but in air you decided that things weren't looking right, maybe it wasn't according to plan or it wasn't as forecast, and you made a change in your decision in flight?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we've had many trips where the routing changed in flight to go at a different altitude or a different route to avoid some bad weather ahead. A more drastic example I remember, and that was quite a while ago. I was on the way to Los Alamos, New Mexico, and we knew that a snowstorm was going to come in from the west. We didn't know exactly when, and this was in the days before ADS-B weather, and when we saw the first flurries, we changed destination to Las Vegas, New Mexico. So landed short of the destination and then continued in the car. I'm sure if I think a little more, I can think of other decisions or other flights similar where the decision of where to go or how to go there had to be adjusted in flight. But that's from the top of my head. That's the example I can remember. And that fortunately doesn't happen very very often. When it does happen, hopefully we recognize the signs and act upon them. But yeah, have you had something like that happen to you where you had to deviate, or were you already in flight and had to make a decision about proceeding or not?
Well, not yet. I'm like I said, I got my license last year. I'm a new pilot. I just bought a plane, so I've got about 30 hours maybe in that plane. We went on a trip on the 4th of July just a few days ago. Coming back from Forks, Washington, we had to climb out. There's some hills, maybe about 4,000 feet in this corridor west of the Olympic Mountains. And the forecast showed that it was going to be pretty clear skies the whole day. We decided to stay a little bit later, do a few more things in the town. And on our way out, progressively as I'm looking, the whole time thinking about the weather, it kind of got more cloudy, more overcast. And as we were leaving, hit quite a bit of turbulence, more than I was anticipating, and certainly more than my wife was anticipating.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of an interesting experience of, I'm not there yet. I don't know where to make or when to make that decision, I guess, as to was this too much? We throttled back, and it didn't feel like it was too terrible or anything, so I kept going. But I guess that's kind of why I brought up these questions about, how do you know when is too much, I guess. I wasn't in any danger of going into IMC, so I wasn't worried about that. It was, clear skies, clear visibility, but the overcast layer, was coming down, and then you have the mountain issue. So I didn't feel like it was a dangerous thing, but the working with passengers, I guess, who aren't accustomed to the turbulence. Have you had any experience with that kind of thing?
Sure. Yeah. I mean that's a good point you bring up. It's not only about safety and getting safely to your destination, but it can also be about comfort, making sure your passengers are comfortable and will want to fly with you again after the flight. And those decisions can be tricky because they're not black and white, right? They're usually gradual changes from good to worse to bad to very bad, and where's the line that you draw that you stop and take action, turn around or land or do something different. Our middle child is the one that is in Savannah in college right now is gets airsick quite easily. So when we fly with the whole family or with her on board, we got to make sure that we try to pick a route, a time, an altitude, whatever it takes to avoid turbulence. And often we're lucky and it works. Sometimes we're not so lucky and it doesn't work. We can play with different altitudes. There's no entirely good recipe there, right? That always works. I mean, sometimes, especially if it's afternoon when the sun is beating down and the thermals are strong, it's just going to be bumpy, and maybe the only thing you can do is land and wait a few hours until the air gets calmer, and then proceed. Fortunately, in my case, the rest of the family has pretty robust stomachs, and I don't recall that we've had to cancel a flight entirely to keep them comfortable. When we did cancel or delay for a day or divert somewhere, it was usually not because of comfort issues, but severe weather, icing, heavy rain, thunderstorms, those kinds of things. And I've been relatively fortunate or lucky in that, when we try to make a good choice of when to depart, a few hours earlier, a few hours later can make a difference, or sometimes a day earlier or later makes a huge difference and is what's needed to make it safe. And I've had fairly good luck with that, just picking the right time for departure, and then most of the time we were able to get to the destination. And I don't know, are you trying to get an instrument rating at some point in the future?
I'd like to get one. The plane that I'm running now is a VFR only plane. It's an RV-12. It's pretty light, so turbulence, you can feel it. And so going into a cloud, I can't imagine would be any good. But I would like to do that someday. And this, I always kind of figured this is a starter airplane for me. Mm-hmm. Something to build time in, super cheap, great for $100 burger runs, that sort of thing. But yeah, I would like to do that at some point. Get the instrument for sure.
Ian, we'll sign off here since I can't hear you anymore. But thank you for being on Skype and connecting, and wish you the best for your flying, for finding calm and comfortable air, and all the best. Bye-bye. Okay, we are an hour and 15 minutes into this. This has been fun. I Thank you for all the questions you've asked, all the comments you've made. We'll end here for now. Let me know here. What I'll do is sometime tomorrow I will post this video on YouTube, edited version. Just try to get rid of the audio problems at the beginning. And then I welcome your comments, your feedback, all of you that have been here during the live show. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you have interest in doing something like this again, if you have any suggestions for topics you'd like me to talk about, any kind of themes that we can work into this, and we'll probably do it again sometime in August. So thank you, good evening everyone, and see you soon.